Just hearing anything, not cheering, no boos. It almost really seemed like it wasn't taking place in Brazil.
Right.
Known to be pretty loud and rambunctious, so it was definitely odd. So I guess we can just start by talking about your thoughts on that, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of people compared it to like the prelims that go down in Vegas and stuff, but kind of how you hit the nail on the head where it's, it was in Brazil and we're so used to a certain type of atmosphere whenever the UFC goes to Brazil, and that was obviously lacking. I thought it was definitely a little bit weird, but I didn't think it was as weird as I thought it would be. There were definitely long stretches where I think while the fight was happening, I forgot that there were no fans. But when the announcer, when Joe Martinez was announcing their names, or when during the walkouts and there was no sound and no fans going crazy, that's the only time it really like hit me that wow, there's really nobody in there. But when the fights were happening, I kind of forgot about it, to be honest.
Yeah. I kind of found when they were doing the like right after the fight, they announced the winner and all that. It was really weird. Like no, usually, like if an American wins on Brazil soil, there's booze, and not hearing any of that was extremely unusual. What were your thoughts on the fights overall? Like, I mean, I was ridiculously impressed with Gilbert Burns. I knew he was legit, but knocking out a veteran like Damian Maia was super impressive.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. That was very impressive by Burns.
yeah,
As far as the fights themselves, I thought that, especially for a card that had so many decisions to get things started, we had 9 decisions in a row. I thought it was pretty good when you consider that there weren't any finishes. Um, Amanda Ribas looks like a future contender. She's a monster. Brandon Moreno picked up a big win against Jussier Formiga, and now he's, at the very top of that division with not too many names ahead of him, if any, for a
yeah,
potential title shot. Um, I was, not necessarily rooting for or against him, but I wanted to see Johnny Walker in a second and third round fight, and seeing, what happened against Krylov. I think he was exposed a little bit, and in a different way than he was exposed by Corey Anderson. But I think I think this fight helped him a lot more than, the Corey Anderson fight did, where it was just a
yeah.
firefight right from the jump and he gets finished early in that one. Moicano dominating, that was very impressive. I'm interested to see him at lightweight. And then the winners of the co-main and main event, I mean, just dominant stuff. Really, really impressed by Gilbert Burns and Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, obviously, Renato Moicano now he was top 15 at featherweight. What do you think could be next for him? I mean, I love a fight between him and Felder. I think that would be exciting, but it's almost some people could say it's a bit much of a jump there at 155. Is there anyone else there that you think would be a better matchup for him, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, it's possible that just based on lack of options, we could have a situation where Charles Oliveira is the one fighting Paul Felder again. Like, there's so much going on at the top of the division. A lot depends on what happens at UFC 249 if we even get that fight. We
Yeah,
also have to wait and see what happens with Conor. Is he going to fight Gaethje or not? Like, there's a lot of moving pieces. Um, Another fight for Moicano that would interest me would be an Ally Quinta. I think that could be an easy fight to make if there's nothing else going on, and Iaquinta's been struggling to find an opponent and get a fight booked as well. Yeah, there's a lot of the fighters that are ranked in the lightweight division are like they're kind of matched up, like sort of at this point,
yeah,
or they're kind of in the wait and see spot, like a Gaethje or an Oliveira, or obviously Conor, which obviously Moicano wouldn't get that fight, but there was, you know what I mean. But there's a lot going on at lightweight, but at the same time, it's like kind of standing still as far as what could potentially happen next.
yeah. It's unusual, especially for the lightweight division, for it to just be at a standstill. I always find that there's always matchups to make at top 15, but I feel like a lot of those guys are coming off losses, like Paul Felder and Iaquinta, and they might be perfect for that rebound or looking for a rebound against someone like Moicano, who's definitely ultra dangerous. How about what do you feel about Gilbert Burns and Damian Maya? What do you think could be next for those guys? Obviously, there's a lot of rising contenders now at 170 with guys like Chiesa, with big win over Dos Anjos, as well as um, what's his name? Jeff Neal, who
Yeah.
knocked out Mike Perry. Two brand new faces there could be waiting for him, or do you think uh, bigger name could be waiting for Gilbert Burns? He's calling out Woodley, who I don't believe should be taking that fight. Personally, I think Colby is probably the better suited fight for him, if not the rematch or the rebooking of Leon Edwards. But what do you think should be next for Burns and as well as Damian Maya?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to predict right now because of what happened with the fight that was supposed to happen on Saturday.
Yeah,
If that fight happened, then we would have a lot of clarity in the welterweight division on what could potentially happen next. But now, I mean, I'm a big Leon Edwards fan, but now the fight to make is clearly Tyron Woodley and Colby Covington. Like that
yeah,
fight has to get booked now. And it leaves Leon Edwards, on the outside looking in. But at the same time, I feel like Leon Edwards should be no more than one fight away from a title shot.
yeah.
So it is Gilbert Burns the type of opponent that Leon Edwards could fight and that could propel him for a title shot? I don't know. Is it maybe Wonder Boy for Leon Edwards? Maybe that fight gets him a title shot. And then after that, I think that you have to start at the top of the division and kind of work your way down. And without knowing that, it would be tough. I mean, I think the ideal situation, if I'm being honest, would be McGregor fights Masvidal, Edwards gets a title shot, and then you book Tyron and Colby to fight the winner of Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, and then you book in whatever fashion Stephen Thompson, Gilbert Burns, Michael Chiesa, and Jeff Neal. The four of them, you book them in with like two different matchups. I think that could create some buzz. But it's so hard to predict what can happen next because we just don't know what they're going to do at the very top of the division.
Yeah, and this weight is making it definitely way more complicated. Because who
Good
knows?
point.
It could be 6 months out before we potentially see a title fight. Who knows how long this is going to be? They're predicting 18 months before they even come up with a solution for the coronavirus. Hopefully, there's matches before then, but who knows? Who knows how it's going to all play out? It just seems like lightweight division's is a mess right now because there's a bunch of contenders, and the same that goes with welterweight. So I have no idea how they're going to rearrange that and rebook it. And I'm hearing that they had to cancel the Barclays Center, so that's no longer an option for UFC 249. So who knows where they're going to take it, whether it be overseas. I know Dana posted a picture of the fight on the moon, and that might actually be the only solution here.
There's got to be some like billionaire with a private island that no one's been to since this whole thing started that they can host the fight. I mean, like that's got to exist somewhere in this world.
Yeah. The problem is, how is it going to get sanctioned?
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, somewhere like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, they might be able to swing something. The only issue there is an event like that worth putting on if there's not going to be anybody in attendance? I just find like I have no idea like that fight's been so jinxed. So I want to see it regardless if there's no one in attendance. I just don't know if it's really worth it or if it's worth waiting it out. But I'm just glad I'm not Dana White.
Yeah, and interesting. Something that I'm looking to is, if that fight does happen, let's say on April 18th we get Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson and they fight. how many fights are they going to have on that card? Is it a situation? Are we going to have a situation where that's the only fight of the night, where like they just make that fight happen and kind of like don't do anything else? Or do they have just like a main card to kind of like nix the prelims? Like, what does that look like? And I mean, who knows? I would imagine that they want to keep it to the least amount of people as possible to not have it go too crazy. But do we get a full card, or I have no idea. Whatever they decide, it's a crazy story. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. I have no idea how it's going to play out, but I mean, I'd still pay the full $70 to watch just the two of them play fight.
For sure.
Yeah, so I think
Definitely.
yeah, even just those two, I'm sold. But I don't think you can just put one fight on TV. Like I don't think you can do that. But
I don't
I
either, but like there's a lot more obstacles the more fights that you have on the card. If I had to bet, I would say that we get like a 5 fight main
yeah
card type of fight.
yeah yeah. I could see that. I could see that happening. Just the main card and nothing after that. Yeah, it's so unusual to see something like that.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess now the we can talk about the main event there. Kevin Lee's saying he's going to take a lot of time off. Um, he's obviously still young. He's 27. I was explaining this to a buddy of mine. I said it's kind of like a Darren Till type thing where you've fought for the title, you've made a name for yourself. Now to get easy fights to build your name back up again and get on a nice win streak, it's going to be difficult because you're just so well known that you're only going to get difficult fights. Do you find like that's a situation Kevin Lee's in? Um, I mean, you saw with Darren Till, he fought for the title, lost 2 straight fights, and then they booked him against Kelvin Gastelum, who was
Right.
extremely dangerous. And I think Kevin Lee's sort of in a weird spot where they're not going to match him up with some guy outside the top 15. It's only going to be real legit fighters. But obviously now he's got good coaches around him, and I do think taking some time is the right move. I just don't know how long he's going to be out for. Um, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting case. Darren Till's a really good, um, way to compare him. But, there was, at least with Darren Till, it was a quick knockout against Masvidal where it was like, he gets hit and then gets knocked out, and he was changing weight classes. He had things going for him. I think Kevin Lee, if he is going to take some time off, go up to 170. I think like at this point, like if you're going to, or if you're going to take time off, like like the next time Kevin Lee fights, the weight should not be an issue.
Yeah,
You get it controlled to where 155 is significantly easier, or just go up to welterweight. And yeah, it's going to be tough for him to get an easy fight, and he hasn't, and he has constantly said that he doesn't want easy fights, which makes it even harder for him in that regard as well. And another person who he's kind of in a similar situation to is, I would say, Anthony Pettis when he got booked with
yeah,
Diego Ferreira, where it's like he's fighting a guy in Diego Ferreira who most people might not know, but like
yeah,
that's a monster. Like Diego
yeah.
Ferreira is a monster, and it was a high risk, low reward fight for Pettis, and we saw how that happened, how that went down. And it's like, is Kevin Lee in that similar spot? I think he very well could be.
Yeah. I also find like guys like, for example, Donald Cerrone, like right now he's on a 3 fight losing streak, and he's been on these losing streaks in the past. He takes a step back, fights a couple of unranked fighters, gets 4, 5, 6, 7 wins in a row sometimes, and he's right back in there. And I think for guys who are on 2, 3 fight losing streaks, that may be the way to go. But like you said, you could find himself in a situation like Anthony Pettis, where you're fighting a killer that no one knows, and he built the name off Pettis, and now Pettis finds himself in a really weird spot. So yeah, there's definitely high risk to doing that. It's just I don't see Kevin Lee being able to pick up victories against the top 10 of the division. Um, I think when he's on, he's capable. But he right now, ever since the passing of his coach. He hasn't looked like the same Kevin Lee that we saw against Michael Chiesa, for example. So I'm not sure what the right move is for Kevin Lee, and I think I forget who I matched him up with, but last weekend, but someone ripped on me for it, and no matter who I match people up with, someone's ripping me up for
Yeah.
it. Um,
It's the
which
cost of doing business.
yeah, I mean I only do it for fun, and the amount of people that are ripping on me, telling me not to do it anymore, I'm like, yo, I'm just doing it. I don't get paid for this. This is just me having fun.
I just looked it up. You matched him up with Beneil Dariush, which I think is a great fight. I think
Yeah,
and that's the type of fight where we're talking about, where it's similar to the Pettis Fajeda fight, where that's a monster right there. And who at times Dariush looks like a future contender sometimes when he fights. Other times he leaves, looking for a little bit more from him. But there's times where he looks like a flat out monster. And that's a tough fight for Kevin Lee. And that's kind of the fight that we're, the same type of fight that we're describing.
yeah, exactly. Like Dariush looked really impressive against Drakkar Klose. Looked insane. He was rocked and then just went forward and knocked him out. So I thought that was insanely impressive. But then he's also had fights against Alexander Hernandez, who, I mean, no disrespect to Alexander Hernandez, but I mean, it was his debut to start, and he managed to beat Beneil. But I think 9 times out of 10, Beneil wins that fight. Um, but yeah, I mean, Beneil's looked incredible in some fights and not so great in others, and that very similar to Kevin Lee. So I don't know. I thought that matchup made sense. They were both on that card, or I think they fought 2 weeks apart or something like that. So time
Yeah,
wise,
Dariush was on the 248 card.
yeah. So I'm assuming time wise, neither one of them seemed to have much. I mean, Kevin Lee got choked out. It wasn't like he got knocked out. I don't think the timeline for his return, assuming he doesn't actually take a long layoff, I think injury wise they should both be matched up well. Like I think the timing should theoretically make sense, and they're both. I mean, I think where there are Beneil is probably a win away from top 15, and Lee could rebound off that. So I don't know. I thought that matchup made sense at the time. But yeah, I mean,
it's a lot easier to just say you're an idiot, you don't know anything, than to actually put all that thought process into a matchmaking decision.
Yeah. There's I don't know. I feel like I've always like it's something that has always interested me. It's like, oh man, it'd be so fun, and why haven't the UFC done it? But there's so much more to it, right? Like, is one of them injured? Is one of them can one of them not get a visa? And there's all these other little things that some people don't put into it in the thought process before booking. And another matchup, for example, after Yoel lost to Adesanya, I said Yoel should take a step back and fight Omari Akhmedov, and people were ripping on me for that. And I get it. Yoel is a monster. He's top 5. He's legit. He's arguably his last 3 losses could have gone either way. But he's losing. He lost 3 fights in a row. So I figured taking a step back and fighting Akhmedov would be a good idea. That being said, everyone disagrees with it. So it's hard to find a matchup that makes sense for a lot of these guys. And I don't know. I enjoy doing it, but there is a lot of people who rip on me for every matchup I make. Yeah, so I would not want to be a UFC matchmaker for that reason.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So what? I guess how long do you think this is gonna prolong? Like, do you think it's gonna be a 2-month thing, 3-month thing? I genuinely think it's gonna be a lot longer than Dana White wants to admit.
Yeah, I think that we might get 249. I think we might get 249.
Do you think it'll be pushed, or do you think it's going to happen on that date?
I would say my feeling is like 60% we get it on April 18th. Because I think Dana White will do whatever it takes to make that fight happen on that date.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we're going to get a fight night card the next week? I don't remember which card is next after that, but does that mean that card is going to happen? No, I think it could be months and months before we see the UFC every single weekend. And at that point, I'm very interested to see how they handle it. Like, let's say they're back in full swing in, let's say, July, right? Like, or July, August, whatever. And that's when the UFC's on every weekend now. How are they going to handle it? Are they going to book more cards on Fridays and have like these double weekends type of thing where they have all these fighters? They're going to have a backlog of fighters who haven't fought in forever. There's going to be so many title fights that are going to have to take place. There's all of these things that are occurring, and you can't necessarily just make all these stacked cards, because then the fighters at the bottom, that unranked fighters, early prelims types of fighters, like, they're not going to fight for like a year. It's tough. It's really, really hard. So I think that we could have a situation where we're seeing the UFC on Friday and on Saturday for multiple weeks. I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah, I also think similar to what they did with, I think, Jack Marshman. Was it Jack Marshman? Someone from this that was scheduled to fight last weekend fought on Cage Warriors.
Yeah.
And I think that's a possibility as well. Like, if you can't get a fight booked in said period of time, or we can't get you on a card, we'll allow you to fight on another, or in another organization against another UFC fighter. Obviously, I don't think that's ideal for the UFC, but I think Dana has to offer them 3 fights a year, I think, is what their contract says.
Right.
So if they can't offer every fighter on the roster, all 500 or whatever of them, at least 3 fights of the year, they have to pay them their fight money. I'm pretty sure, knowing Dana and knowing the UFC, they'd rather them fight somewhere. But yeah, I mean, like you said, they're gonna have to double book, or like they used to. I think previously they used to have an event in the States and then an event in Europe the same day as well, fight nights. But yeah, it's unusual for this to be out, like, and it's shutting down multiple states, multiple venues. So it's not even like they can move it to other areas. It's the entire world right now is locked down. So I don't know how they're gonna work their way around it.
Yeah, and we might get to a point where, like, a huge number, like a huge percentage of the world just has it. Like, that's like very, I would say, possible, but maybe, looking a little bit more like that's like kind of like a doomsday
Yeah.
type of thing. But like, if 80% of the world catches this thing, is it possible that we just say, okay, like, just go back to living your normal life? Like, this is just like part of life now. Like, I don't, until they come up with some way to solve, like some antidote or whatever. Like, is that where we're headed? It's just, there's so many different possibilities. It's so hard to predict what the outcome might be.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unusual, but I just can't wait for this thing to all go away. I mean, every Saturday night for the past 5 years, I've been watching UFC. So
Yeah.
not having that on Saturday nights is weird. What how did you get involved? I guess, like, what was there a specific fight? I was having this conversation with a friend of mine last weekend, and he's like, yeah, he just recently got involved. Connor was the guy that got him into it. I feel like a lot of people got involved and started
Yeah.
watching UFC because of Connor. I got involved personally. I fell in love with it when Rashad and Rampage were coaching The Ultimate Fighter. That
Mm-hmm.
was the when I saw Rampage tear down that door, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm all over this.
Classic.
Is there a specific fight that got you into it, or a specific fighter or event?
No, it was Chuck Liddell. And I would say I was a very, very casual fan for a long time. And then just, I don't even, Chuck Liddell got me into the sport. And then there wasn't like a necessary, like a specific time or specific fight or anything where I just like realized, like, wow, I'm watching this every weekend now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of happened. And But yeah, Chuck Liddell definitely got me into the sport. He was on like the Best Damn Sports Show and like all that kind of stuff. And he was everywhere. And then I hated Tito Ortiz as a kid because, you know,
Yep, me
obviously like
too.
that whole stuff. Yeah, so it was that kind of stuff. And then, you know, at a certain point, maybe I don't know, 7 years ago, whenever, who knows? It was just kind of like, wow, like I love this sport.
Yep. Yeah, I got hooked really quickly. I made a spreadsheet a couple years ago where I have a list of every fighter that ever fought, their records, the events, and the amount of people in attendance. Like it's all connected with formulas, and
Wow.
it's just this passion I have, and I don't even know where it came from. I don't. I mean, I've done a little jujitsu, but I don't do martial arts, so I have no idea where this came from. I have no idea, but yeah, no, I don't know. It took over, and that's literally all I think about when I'm not at work, and even when I'm at work, I'm thinking about it. So it's definitely unusual for me to have this sort of passion, and a lot of my friends are like, they're like, "Why don't you come out?" I'm like, "Got to work on my spreadsheet." But you know, it's definitely a weird passion, but. Um, Once you fall in love with a sport, I find everybody's hooked on it. Like once you're hooked on it, you either die hard or you're not into it at all.
Yeah.
I'm
You're either hardcore, you know, you're the C
exact.
word. You know,
Yeah,
people have love throwing that one around, but
yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I mean, thanks for taking the time to talk. I mean, it's first time for me, so thanks for being pretty open and um, yeah, it was hard for me to get going at first, but I'm glad that we had a pretty good conversation there, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing this. I want more people on. I want to hopefully get a couple fighters on as well once I get a little bit better at it, I guess. And some more fans and whoever wants to talk about it, anything related to UFC, I'm always down to talk. So appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Not a problem anytime, man.
All right. Well, have a good one and keep washing your hands, man, and
Yeah,
stay
stay
inside.
healthy.
Yeah, stay inside. Don't go get infected or anything, and stay safe.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right.